Leafs fam, hockey world, what is going on? This is the Leafs Convo. It's NJ with you. So glad to have you aboard. You picked a great time to jump on the podcast, too. Mike Augello and I have plenty to say on one John Tavares. Tavares Watch is in full effect, after all. This young man is standing at the gate. Will he show courage and go through it? Come on, JT, make the right decision. Plus, Mike and I will also get into Mike's mailbag. Thank you so much for submitting your questions. And as you hear me say these words, think of your favorite chips. Do you eat chips? We all eat chips. Even if you don't want to admit it, you eat chips. Think of your favorite chips because Mike and I are going to give you a top 5 list that we're going to need you to fill out. Mike's ready to go. I'm ready to go. You're ready to go. So what do you say? Let's Leafs Convo right now. Here is our friend, the one and only Tavares detective, known as Mike Augello. Hello, sir.
Good morning, Norman. How are you?
I am not too bad. I'm just waiting for all of this John Tavares nonsense to conclude, and hopefully it is a favorable conclusion for the Maple Leafs.
Well, I think, and I pondered about this yesterday before doing the Puck Talks event up in Toronto, which was mostly Tavares talk for about 2 hours. Whether, now that all the interviews have been completed, if he's going back to the Islanders, we're probably going to find out today or at the absolute worst tomorrow. If he decides he's going to one of the 5 teams, I would think he would let the Islanders know, and there would be some sort of release to the press that he's not going back to the Islanders. And then the other 5 teams would have to wait probably until July 1st because they can't make an announcement until then. So we should find out something fairly soon. And if it's something very soon, it's probably going back to Brooklyn.
What do you think is going through his mind right now? He has to know that the biggest hockey market in the world is awaiting a decision. And the talk about John Tavares is palpable already. And he's not even a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And there's still a chance that he will never be a member of the Maple Leafs. Like, what do you think's going through his mind right now?
I think he's thinking about, obviously winning is number 1 on his list, winning a Stanley Cup. And, I think he's going to get money no matter where he goes. He's going to get, close to $80 to $100 million, depending on, where he goes over the next, 7 to 8 or 9 years. So money, he's going to get paid no matter where. I think the sort of the ancillary things are probably the things at the top of his mind. And Mike Johnson from Sportsnet made a pretty good point yesterday. He says, if you think about, if he goes and wins a Stanley Cup in Dallas as a member of the Dallas Stars, that's an accomplishment, and he'll be lauded as a member of the Dallas Stars at alumni tournaments and all these things. If he wins a Stanley Cup in Toronto, he is set for life. Doug Gilmour is a legend and this is my point of view. Doug Gilmour is a legend in Toronto, and he got the team to 2 conference finals. He didn't even get them to a Stanley Cup. So imagine what the players and I'm not talking about free drinks at bars. I'm talking about advertising opportunities. I'm talking about being a legend in Toronto. Now, I don't know if he's thinking about that, but I think that has to be in his mind when he makes his decision. But again, I don't think that in and of itself is going to be the swaying factor. I think it's going to be a number of things, and I think Toronto is one of the teams, but there's no guarantee he's going to choose Toronto.
This is the Leafs Convo. Norman James in London, Ontario. Mike Augello in Buffalo, New York. So you're at Puck Talks in Toronto. That is a big congregation with all of the local hockey bloggers and reporters, people in the know. Did you get any intel there, or is their guess as good as yours?
It's funny because in hearing Bob McKenzie on TSN yesterday or a couple days ago say, and Bob McKenzie is the dean of hockey reporters. He's the insider ball insiders.
The master.
And he basically said, I don't know what the hell's going on. There's nothing coming out. So, I asked and nobody had any kind of inside info. So really CAA and Tavares' camp is keeping things very close to the vest. And, we will see and we will hear when they want us to see and hear.
Every time you bring up CAA, I think I'm going to make a call because I have a flat tire. What do they call it in the States? What's the AAA?
Triple
A. Yeah, CAA up here. You should see my Twitter inbox. It's pretty nuts. I get a lot of tweets from Leaf fans who are sending me links to reports and a lot of like investigative stuff. Somebody looking on a directory of medical professionals or physiotherapy professionals and trying to identify or show me that John Tavares' fiance is working in a location in Toronto, or this house is up for sale, or somebody just bought this house. They believe John Tavares made the purchase. And it's a lot of fun, Mike. It really is, because we run this podcast that is quite popular and has a base. We are the center for a lot of this information that is transmitted from fan to fan, and it usually networks its way through us. And I'm having a blast with this. Clearly, we'd like to see a result that is favorable for the Maple Leafs when all is said and done. But I have to remind myself to take a step back and be prepared for that breaking news coming from someone like Bob McKenzie or another insider that Tavares and the Islanders have agreed to a deal. I honestly think that he'll go to Brooklyn, Long Island, wherever it is, or Toronto. And I will just say on John Tavares, I honestly hope that he makes the courageous decision, one that will be rewarded not only monetarily, but he'll most likely be decorated as a Maple Leaf if he chooses to follow that path. Look at Wendell Clark. I mean, the guy scored 300 plus goals. He could have been a better player, could have done more, but injuries and the type of game he played, that man is absolutely revered. And you can imagine what a guy like John Tavares would, what kind of response he would get in the years to come. Now he's thinking of the now. And I do hope though that he's cognizant of the kind of legacy he'll be able to create for himself. Does he want to be another one of these Joe Thorntons or Joe Thornton or another player who will put up tons of stats, make tons of money, and it's flip flops and boogie boards and surfing and great? Or do you want to show courage and come to the biggest, most hectic, crazy market in the world and help this team end the streak of futility that is so notorious now, and not just do it to never have to buy a beer again, but to do it because it's part of the challenge and make it happen. This is where he's at right now. And I will applaud, if he chooses the Leafs, I will applaud the fact that he's going to join a team that goes from contender to serious contender. But I will say to John Tavares, congratulations, man. Be proud of yourself, because we're proud of you for making the courageous decision to join this organization when others have chosen not to. And I'll tell you what, the reward that you will get for making the decision to join this team will be plenty, and not just monetarily, but I have a feeling that he could be that player who brings this team from 2 levels away from winning a Stanley Cup to 1 level away. Sorry, Mike. I go on a diatribe, and it is what it is. Go ahead.
I honestly would, obviously as somebody who covers the team, it would be a great story. It would be, something that would make covering the team a lot easier because of all the dynamics. But honestly, as somebody who's a fan of the game, and as somebody who, as a kid loved when trades were made or when players changed from one place to the other, the NHL has gotten a bit stagnant.
Yeah.
You get Stamkos, sort of teasing the idea and then going back to Tampa. And if Tavares goes back to New York, then I just want movement. I mean, even if it's not to Toronto, if it's to San Jose, if it's to Dallas, if it's to Tampa, because it makes the league more interesting. And honestly, I think that, the Islanders have had 9 years to take advantage of one of the better players in the NHL, and they really haven't done it. And now at the 11th hour, they're trying to, kowtow to them and say, "Oh, we'll do everything better." Well, no, you had your chance. Go someplace else and win. And hopefully for Leaf fans, it's Toronto. But
listen,
we'll
here's another thing too. People, I see stuff, people who've never been to Toronto or Americans who don't understand Canada. You have to realize Toronto is one of the freshest cities on the planet. It is one of the best cities anywhere. Like the quality of life, I mean, it's expensive, but it's Toronto. Like this is not a dump. It's not a dump. This is the place. And John Tavares can play for Kyle Dubas, a guy who's around his age, a young, tenacious, a vibrant, inventive, a hungry GM. And I'm going to be honest with you, Mike, Kyle Dubas he's been pressed the hell out of me. And I know that he is a champion of stats, and who wouldn't be to help you win? Why not? But he's so much more than that. And you're going to play for Mike Babcock. You're going to play with Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews and be in Toronto, a beautiful, cosmopolitan, massive city that has you think Toronto is what it is today? Where do you find out what it is in 20 years? Like, this is one of the leading cities of the world. This is not a backwater. This is a place where you can come and you're going to be noticed, and people are going to love you, and people are going to, you might feel like there's a bit of an intrusion on some of your privacy, but this is not a provincial tribal town. This is an international alpha cosmopolitan city. And it's his town, and he can come back and be a part of this, or he can go play for Lou and Barry Trotz and be play in a situation where they don't even have a rink. And I don't want to disparage the Islanders, because I that's not what I'm about. But at this point right now, it's almost like an arbitration. You have to make your case. And John Tavares has all of this. It's right there for him. You can do it, John, and show courage and be rewarded for it. Do it.
Well, one of the things that's a fallacy, and this was brought up yesterday, is the fact that, if you come to Toronto, you're going to get swamped. You're going to get, Mike Johnson is a former Leaf. He wasn't a star player, but he knows, he knows players who have been in Toronto who are of that level. And he says, pretty much the fans leave these players alone. They don't bother them at restaurants. It's not something that's totally intrusive all the time. They know that these players have families and they want to lead their life, or they want to go out and have fun. And
Toronto's the capital of the game, Mike. Toronto's the capital of the game. Everybody, this is the capital of the game. You can see, people the whole entire game, the culture intersects through here, and it's not like this is anybody's first rodeo. People understand it, and again, that's the beauty of Toronto. And people who don't know about this place, it's and it's not ours is better than yours, but it's different here, man. And I think this John's home. He understands it. So you're right, Mike. You're right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think everything will factor in. I still believe that the leading contender is going back to New York, but I still think that there are possibilities here, and like I said, the longer we don't hear the news, the better chance it is that he's not going to go back to New York.
This is the Leafs Convo. Norman James with Mike Augello. Let me make this point, okay? I hope the Islanders do well. I hope every team does. I don't disparage other teams to build up I'm not one of those fans. I don't feel inferior as a Leaf supporter to anyone, because I know the Leafs are the biggest team in the game, and you can go on all you want. You're not the Maple Leafs. Sorry, you're just not. And Leafs are the streak of futility and the terrible and the jokes. It all comes with it, and I wouldn't deny any of it, and I love it. But if Tavares goes back to the Island, I hope that organization takes off. And I hope he does well wherever he goes. And I will not begrudge the man one bit. I would be disappointed that he didn't choose Toronto and do something that defied the odds and to rewrite history. but I would never begrudge anybody else. I'm not one of those fans. I've been around this game for way too long. I've been around sports for way too long to be that tribal. And it's just like, when you see on a comment section, and my buddy Fash in the YouTube comment section will always remind me to not rail on people on Twitter and, to go head to head. And I'm all for that. But my wife would probably divorce me if I turn into a nasty bastard out here. But my point is this, though. It's like, you'll see a Habs fan make a comment. Well, the Leafs haven't won in 51 years. They're, first round exits every year for the next several years. They're not ready to contend. That is not true. That is your blue Blanc Rouge glasses blinding you from what is real. And that's the problem with being a fan sometimes. Is like, imagine Pittsburgh Penguins versus the Philadelphia Flyers. Both sides think the other side is complete trash. Well, you as a fan have just closed your mind to what the reality of the situation is. I want the Leafs to beat all of the other teams, but I'm not stupid enough to think that those teams aren't better than my team. I'm not going to come out and say, well, the Leafs are better than everybody and this and that and this, because that's just not the truth. There is one truth, though, that nobody can contest. The Leafs are the biggest team in the game and will be for the foreseeable future. There's no reason that they will not be. And John Tavares just pushes the big guy on the block, makes him that much bigger. And my point is, John, be courageous. Do the best thing for hockey and do something amazing for your career. And the rest is up to you.
Well, the one encouraging thing out of this, not that I had any doubt on it, but the Leafs' presentation to Tavares, the only inkling that came out was from Darren Dreger a couple days ago, and said that the presentation that the Leafs put forward was impressive, that Tavares and his representatives were impressed, which is a far cry from 2 years ago when basically Steven Stamkos ran out of the 40 Bay and called Tampa Bay and said, I want to re-sign after the mayor of Toronto and the CEO of Canadian Tire, and they had a parade and everything else, and it basically scared him into going back, if he ever even wanted to go anyplace else other than Tampa. But it was professional, it was well done, and that's a testament to Kyle Dubas. He deserves credit for that. So if it works, it's great, and even if it doesn't work, it speaks to Dubas's quality as a young general manager.
Do you want to get into Ask Mike?
Yes, let's do it.
First, do you know who Wes Clark is?
Wes Clark is a former Leaf scout who went to the Florida Panthers a few years ago and is purported to be coming back to the Leafs as part of their scouting collection. He's probably going to be their director of scouting or something like that.
Interesting. And apparently he has ties to one John Tavares. Is that just coincidence, Mike?
I think it's coincidence, but I mean, if Tavares signs at Toronto, then we'll put more stock into it, but I think it's just coincidence.
But this is what I love about Leaf fans, and everybody's just so geeked up. It means so much, and it's not so much about, we want to take them away from you. People here, and the interesting thing is, Mike, you and I come from a generation where it's been futility. We're part of that, right? I wasn't born when the Leafs won the Stanley Cup in '67. I know you were just ending your first marriage at that point, so Mike, you're that old. You've crossed over generations. But for a lot of the people we interact with now, millennials, they were young when the team was just terrible, and now they're into their teens or early 20s, and they're going to be deeply immersed and interested in a team that could for the next 10 years be a contender or win Stanley Cups. So the dynamic is a bit different here. Yet because the history of this team transcends eras or periods, the group of Leaf fans now still feel that they know what their the forebears have gone through, their predecessors or older fans have gone through. So they understand it and feel it. So that's why, this Tavares thing happening, it's not about just nabbing another big name. It's about bringing in, and the reality is bringing in a number one center to complement a number one center on this team and to to potentially have easily the best. Well, I mean, you could look at Pittsburgh, but one of the best group of players up the middle in the league, and adding one more piece in terms of the overall build towards becoming a contender. So I love it. And, if you're out there at I Am Sports Heart, you want to follow me, I'll follow you back. You want to DM me some of these crazy conspiracy theories or concepts or ideas you have. I love it. I'm enjoying this process right now. And I hope it lasts for however long it has to last, with the ultimate conclusion being that John Tavares is going to sign with the Maple Leafs. And I'd just be so proud of him if he does. So let's get into Mike's mailbag. You ready to rock, Michael?
I am ready.
All right. So our first question comes from a loyal listener and supporter of the Leafs Convo, Rob Tyndall at FarmerRob17. If Tavares resigns on the island, what does Mike think the Leafs' best options are to fill the third and fourth line center jobs? Try to keep the answers brief, Mike.
Sure. Well, I think the first thing they'll do is try to re-sign Tyler Bozak because it's a known commodity. Now, Bozak is going to probably get offers of 4 or 5 years in free agency based on the fact there are not a lot of centers in this market. But if the Leafs go up to 3 years, maybe Bozak would re-sign in Toronto. The Joe Thornton thing seems to have dried up. It seems he's going back to San Jose. As for the fourth line center, As for the fourth line center, it sounds like Par Lindholm, the SHL veteran who they signed a few weeks ago, will probably be penciled in as the fourth line center. But I'm sure they're going to acquire some depth options. Mm-hmm. But I think the first move would be to try to get Bozak back, and if not, then they may get a little inventive and make a trade for somebody who's maybe a salary dump type of player. But we'll see.
Have you ever seen the 40-Year-Old Virgin, that movie?
Yes.
When Mo Collins is sitting across from Steve Carell, she goes, "Tuck your sack back. How about tuck your Bozak back?" I don't know. Every time you say Bozak back, it sounds like. Anyway, this one from Gary Gambon. We've answered some of his questions in the past. At Gary Gambon. Aside from JT, I haven't heard that the Leafs have been talking to any other UFAs, including their own. Are they talking to anyone else? So you've addressed Tyler Bozak, and look, I like Tyler Bozak. If he's back, I'm not going to cry about it. I'd like to see if there's anybody else out there. We've heard the name Jeff Skinner linked to at least rumors that he could be a backup plan if the Leafs don't land Tavares. You can address Gary's question, and if you have anything to say on Skinner, go for it.
Well, I don't know about Skinner because Skinner is a winger and he doesn't help them up the middle. Now, that would pretend that they move Nylander to center, but that doesn't seem to be the plan of Babcock. I don't think he'd be comfortable with Nylander up the middle. But I mean, if they can't get a viable option as a number 3, they might have to move Nylander up the middle. But so I don't think Skinner's a fit, and Carolina is going to expect to get a good return, like probably a first-round pick or a young player for Skinner, and I don't think the Leafs are interested in that kind of move. So I would say nay on that. But as for other free agents, I mean, you got to remember they're keeping Dubas has assumed the throne of Lou Lamoriello in terms of secrecy. We're not really going to know about any free agents unless it comes from the free agent themselves. I mean, they're interested in defensemen. Maybe they'd be in on somebody like Calvin DeHaan, but that's guesswork. I don't know. And no, not many people do.
All right, Gary, you have to wait and see like the rest of us. From Carlisle G, huge supporter of the Leafs Convo. Thank you so much. At Leaf Forever. Putting aside all the JT talk, what are we doing to improve our D? We've spoken about this. We've discussed it. We've broken it down. Aplenty. Michael, go for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I said yesterday that the focus really has to be on getting that top 4 defenseman. But remember, this has been at the top of the Leafs shopping list for 2 years, and they haven't been able to do it. Now, I don't think they want to overpay for a top 4 defender. If they get Tavares, then I think pretty much they may be limited by their cap to be able to do anything other than just promote from within. Maybe they can get themselves a short-term free agent. But I think if they don't get Tavares, you're going to start hearing the Chris Tanev talk. You're going to start hearing, I don't know about Erik Karlsson. I think that's a pipe dream. But I think that they'll make a concerted effort to get themselves a top 4 defender. But again, they don't grow on trees, and the prices are obscene. I talked to somebody from Vancouver at the draft in Dallas, and he said that the price that Vancouver was looking for Tanev, for a guy who's missed 70 games over the last 2 years, was exorbitant, and that Toronto probably wouldn't be interested in paying that price. So, it's going to be tough for Dubas, just as it was tough for Lamoriello to find that top four defenseman that's been so elusive.
Anytime Erik Karlsson is brought up, I wonder what – I mean, he's just as dynamic as he gets on the blue line, but you put him on the Leafs blue line, you're going to score even more. But have you addressed your defensive situation at all? Real quick on that, and then we'll continue. No, exactly, and that's the point here. We're looking for – bring back Dmitry Yushkevich, for goodness sakes. I mean, that's the kind – that's who we're kind of that's the kind of player that you're looking for to offspell some of the the deficiencies that Jake Gardiner has on the defensive end, and you let him go and be the creative maestro, the quarterback of the power play, a guy who can pinch a little bit and take some chances, and then that you have your D partner flanking or on the other side, helping you take these risks and keeping things cool at home.
Well, Karlsson's a poster child for the philosophy of the best defense is a good offense. So,
yeah.
But we've seen that hasn't worked with Gardiner because, he's very good offensively, but when it's time to go into your zone, then it's panic time. So, plus, I think Ottawa would ask for much more from Toronto than any other team. So it's a non-starter for me.
Jeremy Scott, what would you do with Jake Gardiner for this upcoming season? Do you move him, get someone to play with him, let him continue his screw-ups, or banish him to the island? I don't think we've, other than Tavares, I don't know if there's a player we've talked about more and discussed and debated more. We like Jake Gardiner, and if he's back, great. He's probably going to put up another 50 points. He skates like the wind. He's nifty with the puck. He'll make you pull your hair out. So, I mean, what do we say about Jake Gardiner at this point that hasn't been said already?
Well, the talk in Dallas was that Kyle Dubas had touched base with Pat Brisson, who obviously is the agent for Tavares, but that he was talking about parameters for a potential Gardiner extension to find out what he would want, because he can be signed to an extension on July 1st. Based on that, if the amount is reasonable, then it's likely that the Leafs would try to sign him to an extension. But if he's looking, and this is the thing we have to remember, next year supposedly Karlsson, Doughty, McDonough, not Ekman-Larsson anymore, they're all UFAs. But as the year goes on, these guys may drop off. The number one free agent in terms of defensemen could be Jake Gardiner next year. And if that's the case, it's the same scenario as JVR, who's going to get $6 to $6.5 million on a 7-year deal. If I'm Dubas, I'm saying, okay, if I can't get him on a reasonable contract, then I either now or before the deadline, I'm trading him because I can't let this guy walk for nothing.
Interesting, though. What are you going to get for Jake Gardiner? Clearly, the team that is acquiring him will know that it's a good time, not a long time, and will want to reimburse the Maple Leafs accordingly, or they'd want some sort of security that a guy like this would commit to their program long term. So that's kind of where they are right now, and that's why I do understand the exploration of an extension for Jake Gardiner. Heck, you're not going to find too many puck rushers from the blue line who can do what he does with that velocity that he skates at. So, maybe keep him in the fold and go and try to find him some help. And I wanted to ask you, we never talk about Morgan Rielly as any sort of trade bait. Now, I'll admit, I'm not a big expert on the contracts and all kinds of stuff like that. I look at the player, and I should probably do a little bit more, incorporate the player's contractual situation a little bit more into my thought of that player. But Morgan Rielly, is he a guy that the Maple Leafs might say, look, he's great. He's probably get a lot of attention putting him out there for trade. If we put him up on the bulletin board, would they consider keeping Jake Gardiner and not letting Morgan Rielly go, but using Morgan Rielly to lure in some talent to help Jake Gardiner's blue line now?
No, I think that's a complete non-starter. I mean, first of all, Riley is on a great contract, $5 million. I think it's another 4 years. And he's grown into, I think, definitely a top two pairing, a top two defenseman.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's not a number one, but he's definitely a number two. So I don't, I think he's growing into the player that they thought he was going to be, and I think there's no interest in the organization in moving him. But I'll tell you, with Gardiner, I floated this idea with a Winnipeg reporter that works for Hockey Buzz. The Winnipeg Jets need left-hand shot defensemen and have an overabundance of right-handed shot defensemen. How about Tyler Myers 1-for-1 for Jake Gardiner? It would solve both teams' problems. I don't think it's not out of the realm of possibility. I'm not saying I've heard any rumors about it, but if you're looking at the needs of both teams, and I think the Jets might have a better chance of signing Gardiner to an extension because Winnipeg is relatively close to his home in Minnesota. So if that happened, I wouldn't be knocked over by it.
Is Tyler Myers a poor man's Zdeno Chara?
He's not. No, he's just big, and he's a big, lanky offensive defenseman. But he's also, he's incorporated a little physicality into his game. But he's not. He doesn't have the mean streak that Chara does.
Chara is one of the great defensemen, intimidating. But every time I think of Zdeno Chara, I think of Darcy Tucker flattening him. Little Darcy Tucker just rocking his world. Amazing. Last question for you from Ryan Bubba Tyrell. NJ, can we make Mike an honorary Canadian July 1st? Maybe send him some beaver tails and ketchup chips. I love you, Bubba, but Mike lives on the border. I mean, Buffalo's practically Canadian anyway. Yeah. Great work, guys. Longtime subscriber, first-time tweeter.
Yeah,
Mike, you are an honorary Canadian.
Yeah, I'm 8 miles from the border, so yeah, I consider myself almost half Canadian, half American. I hate to say though, in response to that, I hate ketchup chips. I'm a dill pickle chip guy, which that they're so much better.
Mike, I dill pickle. You know what's funny? My wife and I actually have a chip ranking, and the number one chips for me are Miss Vicky's sea salt and vinegar. Mm-hmm. The number one chip, just for the overall crunchiness, bite, just delicious. Dill pickle chips are right up there too.
Yep.
And I've never been a ketchup chip guy ever, but my wife loves them. And
Gross.
One time we're low on chips, and I just start eating, and I'm like, whatever. They've got there's a salty taste and a kind of a sweet taste, and I wouldn't rank them on a top 5. But I don't mind them now, and part of it is because I'm trying to, I'm thinking of my long-term longevity here as a husband to my wife. So I'm going to comply with things that she likes and try to like them myself. But they're not as bad as I thought they were. However, dill pickle chips, man, back in the day, the Hostess bags, they weren't that foily stuff. Now it was more of a thicker paper, and you'd rip them open, and then you get your honeymoon suite card from the the little Hostess contest they'd have, and then you'd be licking all the dill pickle chip stuff. And all these millennials are listening to us right now going, what the hell are you dudes talking about?
Old Dutch dill pickle chips.
Ooh.
And they don't make them anymore. Now they do the creamy dill, which is not as good. But I have to say, Canadian potato chips are better than American potato chips for one reason. They're saltier. For some reason, I don't know whether your version of the Food and Drug Administration has different limits on salt, but the Canadian chips are so much saltier and so much better than the American chips.
Come on, Canada's a nanny state. Remember, it's Kanakistan, as Pat Buchanan called it. But no, it's because we all smoke Export A Green, and we have no taste buds left, and the beer. So that's why they need to up the salt content. But yeah, you know what, folks. Send us through the comments section or on Twitter. What are your top 5 chips? My number one chip is the Miss Vicky kettle cooked sea salt and vinegar. That's number one. And you have to think of not just what your favorite taste, but if you had to have one bag, one type of chips to eat for a month every day, what would it be? I mean, heck, we'll call it Chip Watch. Tavares Watch is in a full effect. Who knows what the heck happens, Mike? I mean, I can make a prediction that is sad sap, but keeping my fingers crossed that ultimately he comes to Toronto. I'd like to think JT understands what he is on the cusp of right here, and it's an amazing thing. It's a courageous thing. It's a rewarding thing. It could be he could be decorated beyond belief. And really, I mean, Toronto's a madhouse, but it's home. And I really do hope that he defies the odds, rewrites history, comes and joins a team that he is going to make so much better. And I just go play some fun, amazing, scintillating, effervescent hockey. Leaf fans have been waiting so long for this. It is our time, Michael. We got to go.
Thanks, Norman.
Thanks again for submitting your Leafs questions to us. Hope we could help. Tavares Watch continues. By the next time we pod, we may have a decision. This young man is going back to the island, or to Dallas, or to San Jose, or to Boston, or to Toronto. We can hope that it is the latter. Check out bonfire.com/TLC-gear. We have a few shirts left, just like 4 days remaining in the campaign to buy one, $20 plus shipping. Go ahead and do it. Be a part of the TLC OG. For Mike Augello, I'm Norman James. Thanks so much for listening and supporting the Leafs Convo. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.